The definition of a VPN is a virtual private network. When you connect to a VPN, you have to send your requests through something, and that thing being a server. So the VPN server will take that request and encrypt it and then send it through to the VPN server. So your original location does go to the VPN server, and what they do is encrypt it, and they send the request to whatever website you're trying to go to. And so it masks that initial IP address with theirs. So to whatever website you arrive at, the IP address will be the VPN's IP address or location. IP addresses are still very much so geolocation based, just for more context there. So a lot of people use different types of IP addresses or prefer different country servers to access certain content, but this is the general definition of a VPN. In practice, VPNs can protect your internet activity from prying eyes, especially if you're connected to an unsecure Wi-Fi network, like a cafe or anywhere else that provides free Wi-Fi that's on a public network with other various users. Thankfully, this issue around public Wi-Fi and internet cafes are less of a concern because most web traffic is encrypted today, thanks to a large part of the efforts at a lot of my colleagues at EFF and other organizations like Mozilla, where we pushed for encryption by default on web traffic and secure by default. So back in the day, it used to be HTTP in that URL scheme in your browser bar. And HTTPS, you can kind of think of that as HTTP secure, where that is encrypted traffic. So when you visit a website, it will normally have HTTPS more so often than just HTTP nowadays. So the whole snooping on your traffic in a airport Wi-Fi scenario is actually much harder to do now. A VPN in practice can also help you circumvent internet censorship on a network that blocks certain sites or services. So censorship can be deployed in various ways. There could be websites that, your job could be blocking. There could be websites that governments could be blocking. There could be websites that other institutions may block for various reasons. So some people may use a VPN in this case to circumvent that. So that way, the traffic will be encrypted and hidden from the prying eyes of whoever's trying to see the websites to block. You can also connect to a corporate intranet in your office. So this was the original use for many years for VPNs, where you may remember you had to connect to a VPN to connect to different office websites that were on their intranet in order to use them abroad or while you were traveling or at home. So commercial VPN usage is actually much more frequent today than it used to be. But the original usage for VPNs, I would say, was way more corporate focused and accessing corporate services and networks rather than just general use VPNs. Where you can use VPNs, you can use VPNs on your desktop, PCs, your laptop. You can use VPNs on smartphones, tablets, not for the faint of heart, but you can also put VPNs on your router, actually, and smart TVs and game consoles. So how do VPNs secure your traffic? So what ends up happening for a visual display of what I had described earlier, where you'll request a website, and assuming that your VPN is already turned on, it'll encrypt that information and hide that information from the router itself, from your internet service provider. They can't see this information that you're requesting, and it just sees as encrypted information going through. And the VPN will reroute your request to its server. And then if you see the little country flags at the bottom, it kind of gives an indication of the change of IP address, right? So the VPN's country flag is different. So by the time I land on https://eff.org, it'll appear as if the traffic came from this VPN server. What VPNs can't do. So There's a lot of misconceptions on what VPNs can do for people. And at its core, VPNs can only secure and encrypt your traffic. That is the base functionality of a VPN. Any other promises, any other, I would say, platitudes toward, what a VPN can do can often be a misconception with other services a VPN provider may give. And I'll explain a little bit of that a little bit later in the slides. But what they can do is provide absolute anonymity. They can secure your traffic, but it cannot hide completely who you are and where you're from. There's still different indicators of who you are as a person when you connect to a website. VPN servers still see where you're coming from. So in the case of like law enforcement access, if VPNs had that information and logged that information, then they can give that over to law enforcement. VPNs still don't block fingerprinting, a practice that a lot of websites use to try to track through cookies and things of that nature. Little text bits where you click on links and there'll be a text bit associated with that link, and you'll go to the website and they'll try to associate you through your behavior. So behavioral tracking, VPNs can't prevent that. So there's still different ways to grab and capture people's identity based off, different various ways they use devices, different browsers you use with different settings. It can't provide absolute anonymity, but it can provide security. And those two things aren't synonymous. VPNs cannot prevent surveillance. So there could still be some sort of, to not have such an extreme example around governments, say your job has a VPN and they're still surveilling the fact that they can still see that you're using a VPN from your computer. So say that you're trying to access a site that's been blocked for whatever reason. I remember my first job, Facebook was blocked for productivity reasons from the company. And what ended up happening is either we run a proxy or a VPN in order to access that, or just access it through our phones because we had personal phones. So we didn't really need to access Facebook on our work computer. But Facebook being way more popular at the time to connect to people, this is around 2011, 2012. So I stayed connected a lot with my college friends that way. So, corporate surveillance could still happen where they're, hey, we see that you're using a VPN, IT department might contact you. Hey, we see you're using a VPN. But thankfully, I've never really got flagged for using a VPN at work, but I'm pretty sure it has happened to someone out there. VPNs don't provide all-in-one security. They just secure your traffic. They just secure the website information that you're going to. They do not provide, by default, they do not provide ad blocking. VPNs by default do not provide phishing protection when you get a phishing email or spam. VPNs aren't by default antivirus blockers. They're not virus blockers. They don't act as antivirus. So when you do approach different companies that say that, their VPNs can do that, it's usually because it's an extra added on product that you usually have to pay for. So VPNs just secure your traffic. It's not a one-stop shop for security. VPNs don't automatically provide app updates. They don't automatically provide updating your phone or your PC. Those are still things you still have to do yourself or with different products. I already went over preventing law. It doesn't prevent law enforcement access. So law enforcement access requests go to VPN servers all the time, and different companies handle it different ways. Some companies claim they don't log any information, but then they were proven later that they did log just enough information about a person on their service, one of their customers, to give and hand over to law enforcement. This has happened in various countries. Obviously, different countries handle censorship differently. Say, the noted Great Firewall in China, where they block a lot of websites with their middleware. And a lot of people use VPNs within the country to access a lot of sites outside of the country, such as google.com and their services. But, In the case of law enforcement access, VPNs don't necessarily prevent that totally. And you usually have to look up the policy of the VPN and their history. VPNs don't guarantee speed. Some do, some don't. It kind of depends on the scenario. It depends on your router capabilities, the internet service provider's package that they gave to you, like how much speed that they have allocated to your house on your plan. So VPNs can actually slow down your traffic in some cases, especially depending on the type of VPN technology, because I'll get into it in a second. VPNs aren't just one technology, it's different protocols, and VPNs come with different iterations. They get modernized. So there's old protocols of VPNs that can actually be slower, but are more reliable. And then there's newer protocols that are used nowadays that are very fast. So it could actually speed up things because of whatever the VPN service is providing you and what is in their infrastructure as a VPN setup. So all those things kind of come together when you use a VPN, and it doesn't guarantee speed all the time. So how do you choose the right VPN for you? So this is a list of principles that at the EFF that we talk about in our guides that I usually tell people to look at before they jump and get a plan with a VPN. So what often I tell people to look at the claims. I'll get into all this in some examples, but this is just the principles listed. VPNs practices, with their trust and transparency. Do they say that they log information? Do they say they're a logless VPN? Do they make other claims around trust and transparency? Do they have blogs dedicated to how they serve people with their VPN service? Look at their business model. How do they make money? So this can become a thing where you may ponder a free VPN, but then you have to say, why is this free? And looking at the business model, can they afford to just have a free VPN? So a lot of these cases can look a little nefarious or a little sketchy when they don't really have a clear business model. Their reputation and history is a Google away, usually. When a VPN company messes up, it hits the news. There's been several breaches that's been recorded in the past in the news, and normally you just have to type in the search bar, reputation, this VPN, or breach, and the VPN's name, and articles may or may not pop up. And honestly, in this case, you could say, well, this company's had too many breaches. I don't trust this one. Or you could say they had a really good response. They were fast. They told customers what happened. They told customers what to do after a breach has occurred, and they remedied the issues. And you could say they learned their lesson and they seem like a stronger company for it. That has happened. It's not impossible in the security world. A lot of people learn their lesson after they've had a big breach at their company. A lot of trust gets discarded, among their customer base, but some handle security incidents better than others. And so it would be very much known if a VPN provider had a really bad security event and they didn't respond properly. And what is their data collection practice and their privacy policy? I know no one likes to read privacy policies. It can be daunting because some people's privacy policies are a little bit more buried than others. I would say in recent practice, some companies are better than others for brevity. They'll shorten pieces of their privacy policy and then lead you to the more legal text below. But if they clearly outline, and a lot of VPNs do this now, where they clearly outline data collection and practice and what exactly that they're doing with the data, whether or not you can hold them to this, because privacy policies can change. So normally you'll get a notice though, where our privacy policy has changed, and that can be cumbersome and burdensome, that's for sure. When you get an email and you're like, well, what changed? And if they're a good one, they'll say explicitly what changed without making you read the entire privacy policy again. And if they don't do something like that, then it's very unfortunate. So hopefully whatever VPN providers are out there are actually being transparent about what changed in their privacy policy instead of making you go through the whole thing again. So, and the last piece is a lot of VPNs, the good ones will at least list 2 protocols to use. This is what I talked about with older protocols for VPNs versus the more modern ones. So encryption, or the types of encryption that they use. Normally people are offering OpenVPN or WireGuard these days. WireGuard is the new fancy kid on the block. It's a fairly younger protocol that's well tested, and a lot of bigger names use it now. They have their own implementations normally of these protocols, but by the end of the day, at base, they'll say we offer an OpenVPN one, which is older, but tried and true, and there's no real security issues with OpenVPN that are warranted any sort of like criticism if a company uses it. It's a pretty standard VPN. A lot of corporations use OpenVPN still. So, and WireGuard, like I said, is more newer kid on the block. And I say newer kid in terms of technology years. So I would say the last 5 years, WireGuard really got popular with VPNs because it's so fast. So normally they're offering at least 2 protocols, and they'll say that in their documentation somewhere, like, how do we protect your data, or this is the technology that we use. So that example, VPN number 1, years ago, I did write about NordVPN, and the page actually doesn't exist anymore because they did amend the language. They used to use this phrase called military grade encryption. What does that even mean? I don't like language fluff when you're providing security products for people. Military grade encryption in this case is talking about classified information versus top secret information. And there is a standard encryption algorithm that you do have to use for classified information versus top secret. It's something called AES. And I won't get into the unfortunate alphabet soup that is the security world, but that's the military grade encryption that they're talking about. So this term still floats around, and it's unfortunate because honestly, if you've ever worked in government, you would know that the tools can be very archaic and old. So it's not a true reflection all the time of what our governments are using at large versus a standard that's been in place. So just in, I would say like 2020, 2021, I actually put this Politico article up that I was actually interviewed for and by the reporter, because the Pentagon just during the pandemic fixed their email security. So a lot of top secret information was just floating around in the Pentagon's emails and easily snooped on. So when you say things like military grade encryption, it's not like a true reflection of what's being offered here. And it gives the customer a false sense of, in a fluffed up sense of what encryption means. Just say the protocols that you're using and just leave it at that. In my opinion, other people may have different opinions. Like this article explains that, whatever terms help people understand security is good, but I actually don't think military grade encryption explains very well what's happening here. And also, oops, I have a typo here. My apologies. Bad VPN example number 2. And I also want to preface that even though I mentioned NordVPN as doing this as a bad practice, I am not necessarily endorsing or saying that the NordVPN is bad as a whole. I'm just saying that this was a bad practice that I had called out some years ago. They call it next generation encryption now, which, I understand that marketing needs something. So I don't really agree with that term either. I just like using the word encryption and then explaining what type of encryption that they're using. So that's what I mean here. And I'm not necessarily saying don't use NordVPN at all. This is just something that they did I didn't agree with. Another bad VPN example is free VPNs. There's a lot of apps out there, especially on Android ecosystem. The Google Play Store was actually caught with many quote unquote free VPN apps that were actually very nefarious, malicious, in some case served malware. So I definitely don't recommend going to the App Store and just downloading any VPN that says free. Understand costs can be a thing, right? You don't necessarily want to add a new subscription. We're already very subscription heavy with our streaming services and other things that we have. So adding another subscription can be, it can add up. And so that's why these free VPN apps can be appealing. But if it just says like free VPN or, with no indication of what their business model is, it can be very sketchy. It can be something that I would raise as a red flag. So a good VPN example is blogs and explanations. So I think Cloudflare does a really good job of blogging when they've changed something, or like most good VPNs will have some sort of language or literature around their approach to how they secure people's traffic. Cloudflare does a really good job. Mozilla writes some blogs here and there, but without getting into what this means on the left or the right, it's just an example saying, okay, they regularly update their blogs on how they implement the latest and greatest to secure people's traffic. And they often make moves that are very much so a scaled approach because of the fact that Cloudflare is an internet infrastructure company. They provide different internet protection and services for different enterprise customers, which is why they're able to provide what they say like a free VPN service. But in this case, it's not technically a VPN, but I won't get into that too much. But they do provide free services, but their main business model is because they make so much money and revenue from being an internet infrastructure company and security company. So that's how they're able to provide free services, because of the fact that it's very clear where they make their money from. And good VPN example number 2, I really like it when someone just says, we provide a VPN, that's it. They may have a suite of products. So Mozilla definitely provides more than just a VPN. They provide a browser to the public. They provide other services as well. They provide technical documentation and different services around that. So their product suite can change from time to time, that's for sure. But Mozilla VPN, that's all they offer in this case is we just provide this VPN. You get a subscription on a monthly basis or maybe an annual basis, and that's it. Now, to the right, you'll see NordVPN. Once again, not saying that they're all bad, but NordVPN does this thing where it's like, hey, NordVPN, more than a VPN, threat protection with NordVPN at no additional cost. So these are the little things that they sprinkled into the VPN service. That's not necessarily the VPN itself. It's what they wrap up into it. So they'll provide, protection if you download a link that looks suspicious. The NordVPN service will flag it. They have a tracker blocker, an ad blocker, a URL trimmer, because there's often tracking tags at the end of URL after that question mark. There's like, if you see like a large link and it's just a bunch of things after a question mark, those are normally just marketing and tracking tags to see where you came from, or if you came from an email campaign. Some of you may be familiar with that, some of you may not. So they have a URL trimmer as well with their product that you probably download onto your PC, your laptop. So this can be the part where I get a little flustered, because I'm like, well, this isn't just a VPN, and I'm glad that they say more than a VPN here, but it can conflate what people think VPNs do. And VPNs do one thing. So if you're adding more stuff to provide more security for your customers, that's fine, but it's very, very important to make that clear that VPNs at its base aren't default ad blockers or tracker blockers. So which one do you pick? I'm not going to give you which one to pick because I don't like endorsing a company. Companies' practices changes every day. So there's various ones out there that are tried and true, and there's other ones I've had different practices I've disagreed with. But honestly, I can't provide a one size fit all because everybody has different needs really when it comes to a VPN. So what I usually tell people before I even get into the VPN talk, whatever default security features you have on your phone and your PC goes a long way. and updating your devices go a long way. If there's a system update or an app update that you've been ignoring, put some tea in a kettle, and go sit and actually just upgrade and take some time to do that. Upgrading your stuff and upgrading your apps on your devices is probably the best security tip I can ever give someone, because there's so much that is involved with patches that come through, especially on like an operating system level of your phone or your PC or your laptop. And I just want people to get into the habit of, just updating your stuff when need be. And that portion can take you very far, because there are attacks that happen every day that try to target people with older devices and older apps or older operating systems. So before I do the VPN talk, I usually do that. Now, getting into the VPN stuff, what does your budget look like? Do you feel like paying for yet another service? How much can you allocate for yet another subscription? Definitely look at your budget and look at that first before you start looking around at VPNs. There's some more expensive than others. There's some that may tack on some features that you don't need. Once again, if they're just offering the VPN and you just want the VPN, that's great. You could pay for extra protection, but at this point, if you're just looking for a VPN to encrypt your traffic and, keep your internet more secure, that's what you can do, and allocate your budget for that. How many devices? There's different VPNs that offer different subscriptions based on how many devices you want a VPN profile on. So some will say a basic subscription will be 1 device, or a plus subscription could mean 3 devices. How many, people in your home are using different devices, and you can count from there and then look at the subscription prices after that. And do a little homework. All the principles that I talked about, Google searching the company, looking at their practice, looking at their website. Is it clear, that this is a VPN that is reputable to you? Is it clear what their business model is? If they're just straight up saying we have a subscription model for our VPN, that's usually a good sign. If they're offering a free VPN and it's not quite clear how they're making money, not a great sign. So just do a little homework. Pick one and stay vigilant of any news about the company that you do choose. So things can change. There's different ones out there like ExpressVPN, NordVPN, Surfshark, I believe that's the other one, but there's quite a few out there already, and things change over time. So if you see something pop up in the news about the VPN service that you're using, just check in on it, see what happened. Did your VPN service even email you about the issue that you saw in the news? If not, I would contact customer support like, hey, what's going on? Haven't seen any communication from the company about this thing I've seen in the news. So, pick one, but stay vigilant, and just keep your ears out for any news about the company that could concern you.